The water hits your legs before you understand why you're standing in it. It's not warm.
It's not even cold.
It's something past cold, a temperature your skin has no word for. Your lungs seize. You can't call for help because you can't breathe in enough air to make a sound. This is the North Atlantic, April 15th, 1912, just after midnight. The ship you boarded 4 days ago as the safest vessel ever built is now tilting beneath your feet at an angle that makes standing impossible. You have less time than you think. Do you jump now, or do you wait for a boat that might never come? Everyone knows the story.
An iceberg. A 5-hour sinking. 1,500 people gone into the dark.
But the iceberg didn't kill most of them. The water did, and the water didn't need 5 hours. It needed 15 minutes. Violet Jessup was a stewardess aboard Titanic that night, and she survived by climbing into a lifeboat with an infant handed to her by a stranger. She'd later say the ship went down so quietly at the end that people in the boats argued about whether it had really happened.
Quiet doesn't mean gentle.
It means the worst part was happening somewhere the survivors couldn't fully see. In the water, to the more than 1,000 people still in it. Second Officer Charles Lightoller was one of the last men off the ship. He was pulled under by suction as it sank, then blown back to the surface by a blast of air from a ventilation shaft. He climbed onto an overturned, collapsible boat with dozens of others and spent the rest of the night standing on it, shifting his weight with the men beside him just to keep it from rolling. He survived. Most of the people still in the water around him did not.
Not because they drowned.
Because their bodies stopped working. Here's what almost nobody understood in 1912, and what modern researchers like Dr. Gordon Giesbrecht, a cold water immersion physiologist, have spent decades studying since. When you go into water below about 15 degrees Celsius, that's roughly 59 degrees Fahrenheit, your body doesn't slowly get cold. It panics immediately. This is called cold shock response. Your blood vessels near your skin slam shut to protect your core. Your heart rate spikes, sometimes doubling in the first few seconds. You gasp involuntarily, again and again, whether or not there's air to breathe in. If a wave hits your face during one of those gasps, you inhale water instead. People who could have swum 50 meters on a warm day drown within the first 60 seconds, not from exhaustion, but from a reflex they couldn't override. Think about that for a second. Every safety expectation you have about water assumes you get to choose how you respond. Cold water removes the choice. Your body makes the decision for you, and it doesn't ask permission. Titanic carried 20 lifeboats, several only partly filled when they were lowered, because crew loading them in the dark genuinely believed a full boat would snap the davits, the mechanical arms holding the boats, and dump everyone into the sea. Nobody had tested that fear.
Nobody had time to.
Third Officer Herbert Pittman helped load and lower one of the earliest boats, and later testified under oath that he was ordered to keep distance from the ship rather than circle back for swimmers. Out of fear his own boat would be swamped by desperate hands grabbing at the sides. That single decision, repeated in boat after boat that night, meant hundreds of people who might have been pulled from the water within minutes were left in it instead. The water Titanic's passengers went into that night was around -2 degrees Celsius, below freezing. Salt water freezes at a lower temperature than fresh water, so it stays liquid, but your body doesn't know the difference. It just knows it's dying faster than it's ever died before. So let's walk through what actually happens, minute by minute, to a person in that water. In the first 30 seconds, cold shock takes over completely. Your breathing becomes fast and uncontrollable. Panic sets in even in people who are normally calm under pressure, because this isn't a mental reaction, it's your nervous system overriding you. Some people die right here in the first minute, from what's sometimes called the gasp reflex, pulling water into their lungs. If you survive that first minute, you get roughly 10 more of them where your muscles still work. This window is sometimes called swim failure time. Your hands stop gripping, your arms stop pulling. Not because you've given up, but because cold blood is pooling away from your limbs to protect your heart and brain, and muscle tissue simply cannot contract properly once it drops a few degrees. People found floating in life vests near the wreck site, unresponsive, weren't necessarily dead yet when witnesses saw them. Their bodies had just stopped obeying them. After that 10-minute mark, if you're still breathing, you enter the phase that actually kills most cold water victims, hypothermia itself, as your core body temperature drops. Confusion sets in. Some victims report a strange sense of warmth right before losing consciousness, a dangerous paradox caused by blood vessels finally giving up and dilating near the skin. Full hypothermic death, with the average adult's core temperature falling below the low 20s Celsius, that's the point of no return, typically takes somewhere between 30 minutes and 2 hours in near-freezing water. But almost nobody in the North Atlantic that night got 2 hours. Rescue ship Carpathia didn't arrive until nearly 2 hours after Titanic went under, and by then, of the more than 1,000 people who'd gone into the water, only a handful were pulled out alive. There's a detail almost every account from that night mentions, and it still unsettles researchers today. Survivors in the lifeboats, sitting just a few hundred meters away, described the sound coming from the water in the minutes after the ship went under. Not screaming exactly. A kind of collective rising moan from over 1,000 voices calling out at once. It went on for perhaps 20 minutes.
Then it thinned.
Then it stopped. That timeline lines up almost exactly with the swim failure and hypothermia windows researchers have since mapped in laboratory cold water trials. The sound wasn't fading because rescue was coming. It was fading because bodies were shutting down one by one in the order the cold reached them. Would more lifeboats have helped? Yes, absolutely. There were only enough seats for about half the people aboard. But here's the counterintuitive part. Investigators kept circling back to for decades. Even a fully loaded set of lifeboats wouldn't have saved everyone still on the ship when it sank, because the sinking itself happened faster than most people. Crew included believed possible for a ship of that size. Titanic was designed to stay afloat with any 4 of its watertight compartments flooded. The Iceberg tore a gash that flooded 5. That 5th compartment is what doomed the ship, not the size of the gash, which by some estimates totaled less area than a small doorway. So the Iceberg started it. But the Iceberg isn't what took the 1,500 lives.
Underestimated cold water physiology did.
A ship's crew and passengers who, like almost everyone alive in 1912, had no real concept of how fast a human body fails in near-freezing water, and no cultural instinct to get into a lifeboat immediately with the same urgency as the ship is sinking. That gap between how dangerous something actually is and how dangerous
it feels didn't disappear in 1912. It's
still exactly how people misjudge risk today. Someone canoes onto a cold lake in spring because the sun is out and the air feels fine, not realizing the water underneath is still 50 degrees. Someone falls through thin ice near a shoreline, 20 feet from safety, and stops being able to swim within a minute. Not because they're weak, but because the cold shuts their body down on a timeline nobody warns them about. Coast Guard rescue statistics from cold water regions still show the same pattern the Titanic inquiries uncovered by accident. Most cold water deaths happen close to safety, in the first few minutes, to people who were confident, capable swimmers moments earlier. It shows up in smaller ways too, away from any ocean. It's the version of risk where the danger you can name, the iceberg, the fire, the fall, gets all your attention, while the slower, quieter mechanism actually doing the damage goes unnoticed until it's already working on you. A late night at your desk doesn't feel dangerous the way a car crash does, so you don't treat exhaustion with the same urgency, even though fatigue kills on the road just as reliably as a mechanical failure. The lesson Titanic taught, at a cost of over 1,500 lives, is one cold water safety courses still teach survivors today. It's not the emergency you can see that kills you fastest. It's the one your body can't buy you time to notice. The water hits your legs before you understand why. It's already too late. Now you understand exactly why.